Thank you. I wanted to start out with Dr. Barkan and Mr. Maddox. MAP 21 made numerous changes to the UTC selection process, including instituting a peer review based selection of UTCs as opposed to the earlier earmarked system. There are some feedback that I had received afterwards from some applicants for UTCs who were not successful about the way that the review was done, and especially about the transparency. Now, you have been successful in that process, but I just wanted to ask both of you, starting with Dr. Barkan, is there any way you could see this process improved?
Well, thank you for the question, and obviously thank you for your support of transportation research in general. We did win twice, and so we're obviously happy with the process. I would say that it was very transparent. The RITA staff offered to provide us with detailed feedback on what the strengths and weaknesses of our proposal were. I think that was made available to all competitors. As part of our meeting with RITA staff, we went through that, and that was useful to us in terms of modifying how we were, because there were, even though we won, there were some weaknesses identified, and we responded to those and improved, I think, our ability to fulfill those aspects, and as well as emphasize, obviously, the strengths that they saw. So I'm quite satisfied with the situation as it stands now.
Mr. Maddox, do you have any comments? Yeah.
I could add to that. We think that the UTC program is critical. I think you mentioned in your opening statement that we need a continuity of research, and the UTC program helps provide that. It allows universities to contribute on the basic and early research, and we think it's critical. Any, I guess, slight improvement could go towards perhaps making the system a bit more flexible so that a given academic organization could throw its hat in the ring for multiple UTC awards, because our organizations are very diverse, and the transportation research needs are very diverse. So putting them into one bucket or one award for a UTC program where we could be doing multiples would be a large improvement. I think also just the continuing the need, keeping with the need of this longer-term focus for the UTC program. It's difficult, of course, for any academic organization to ramp up quickly and then stop when award stops, and the problems don't stop. So anything that could be done to broaden the time span of the awards would be a big help. But we think overall the UTC program is very successful, is very much appreciated, and should be clearly continued.
Dr. Barkan, do you have another comment there?
And I want to say I agree with my colleagues' statements. I would add one thing. I think one thing that would be helpful in future, as I said in my remarks, I think very clearly stating, assuming it's Congress's intent, that the UTC program should be multimodal. It encourages all modes, participation of all surface modes as part of the research and education program.
Thank you. I don't have much time left here, and this is a question that we could spend an hour having everyone comment on, but I'm going to throw it to Ms. Tabar, because you said Japan. From what you said, it sounds like Japan's further ahead of the United States on this. We have, across here, we have state, federal, universities, private industry. What would, ideally, how do we move forward most quickly in getting everything in place to have a intelligent system here? What would you like to see from the private industry side, if you could ideally set it out there?
So I guess to start with, we are putting it out there. I think.
Well, I'm looking at getting to the end where we have an entirely intelligent system. How do we most quickly get there?
So I think, as you mentioned, and from my remarks, Japan's side has focused a little more on the V to I as opposed to the V to V as their first step. Where in the U.S. market, we're focusing a little more on the V to V. But to get both benefits and the full benefit of the system, I think both aspects are necessary. So I think although the automotive industry is maybe making a lot of steps towards the V2V, the V2I still does need some reinforcement, and additional research is necessary to understand and test those scenarios. So I guess from our perspective, we'd like to see more collaboration and more funding towards that testing, as well as making, as I mentioned, outreach to the actual end consumer to help them understand the technology, help them experience the technology, and maybe dispel any myths that they may have about the benefits and the overall robustness of the systems.
Well, if I could just briefly follow up, is the government, federal government, doing enough, doing it quickly enough to set standards, or does that need to move more quickly?
So again, we for my comments, we are encouraged that the rulemaking and for the communications protocol has been moving forward. We'd like to encourage that to happen as quickly as possible. The automotive cycle is a little slow, and so we want to make sure that we have time to incorporate any requirements like that. So the sooner those requirements can be solidified, I think the sooner we can merge those into the market.
Thank you very much.
That was very.
Thank you. Yes, data are critically important, but I hope no one latches on to the first part of what Mr. Massey said and thinks that because we don't do earmarks here in Washington that we are, the money is being spent according to data, because I assure you the governors and state legislators are not spending the money by data. So always like to make that point, because I always think earmarks are something Congress should be doing. But, and I know Mr. Massey got to that point about politics still being very much involved in.
I assure you, there's not enough data in Kentucky either.
I'm going to give this to Mr. Belcher, and just because of your position, I'm sort of looking for an idea about where we are going and how quickly we're going to get there. Where are we going to be 5 years from now, 10 years, 15, 20? I'm not sure how long all this is going to take, but I'm just sort of looking for an idea, a vision of what is the future going to be like and how quickly are we going to get there. At 5 years from now, how much intelligent transportation, how much is going to be in place? 10 years from now, 15, and where do you see this? How quickly do you see this coming about? Because we've talked about all these different ideas, V2V, V2I, and then bringing in pedestrians, cyclists. How quickly do we get there? Can you give some idea? And that's a very tough question, but you must, being President CEO of ITS America, you must have some ideas about this and how quickly we're getting there.
You decided to give me the easy one, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure someone else would love to take it if you.
Yeah, I'll take a cut at it. I think we're at a position unlike any other time in our history with respect to transportation and what's possible. Congressman Massey talked about data. I mean, we're just barely scratching the surface of using data in meaningful ways and using data analytics. And so if I look at the data that we've got in the transportation system and the data that Mr. Woodruff talked about at the state levels, right now we've got isolated segments of data. So the state transportation system's got one pillar of data. The transit system's got another. The emergency response system's got another. And in any given city, you might have 20, 25 different data systems. And so we're at the point, we're getting close where you can start to scrape those data systems and to utilize them in an intelligent way. Once you start to do that, then you can start to manage transportation not just in a block by block and not just in a city and not just in a single mode, but start to manage transportation on a regional basis and a multimodal basis. that really opens up opportunities that we currently can't do. And we're going to have to use things like data, things like technology, because quite frankly, I don't see a big investment in our infrastructure coming anytime soon, even though it desperately needs it. And so the states and the cities are going to have to look, one to technology, two to the private sector. I think we're going to see greater partnerships between the public and the private sector. And you're going to see opportunistic deployment. So perfect example is in Southeast Michigan, both Toyota, the University of Michigan, the state, other private sector agencies, the federal government are invested in the first real deployment of connected vehicles. And that's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years. Going to move from 3,000 vehicles in the safety pilot to 30,000 vehicles in Southeast Michigan. This is going to be before the rules come out. So what can Congress do? Congress can make sure that as we do this, we protect those bold people that are willing to take the risks, willing to get equipment, willing to make investments, so that they're grandfathered when we finally get the rules. Because if we don't take advantage of the spectrum we've got, we don't take advantage of the opportunities that we have over the next 3 to 10 years, we're going to lose it. And so it's going to take bold people like Michigan, like Florida, like Texas, like Indiana that are going to be early adopters, that are going to partner with the private sector, going to partner with universities, and start to see deployment. So I think what you're going to see over the next 5 to 10 years is I do think you're going to see adoption of connected vehicle technology. I think it's going to happen before the rules come out. I think you're going to see it in cities where you've got courageous leaders that we can protect. I think you're going to see it in university centers where you've got universities that are willing to put their money where their mouth is. And you're going to see the private sector pushing this along in very, very aggressive ways. And we're going to do it in partnership with the federal government. But I do think it's going to happen. We're going to have to move more quickly than the federal government's capable of moving. We're going to have to move more quickly than vehicle fleets turnover. And so I do see that. The final thing that I'll say, because I could talk about this forever, when I talked about the shared use mobility, I really think that's part of the future. I think we're going to start to see people, especially a younger generation, that don't have the same interests in owning cars that we had. I mean, I had a car when I was 16, the day I turned 16. That's changing. You know, what's far more important is being connected. And the cars are just becoming a node on the network at this point, especially in the urban environment. And so we're seeing different ownership models. I mean, every automobile manufacturer now has a car share, company, or is thinking about one. Think about that. So that's the future we have. It's really exciting. It's hard to predict, but it's going to be it's exciting, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Orange.